Two. Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second hour of the Santita Jackson Show. We have had quite the stirring conversation on the other side in the first hour as we were talking about the issues that are driving the 2024 campaign. The Democratic National Convention is less than a week away. Less than a week away. What are the issues that should be driving the voter that will be driving you to vote, or maybe you're still holding back in 2024? I'm Santita Jackson here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and streaming on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and on X at Santita J. Please get on over there, the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and please help to drive our algorithms. We need your help. Please like and share the show. I hope that you will come to the Rainbow Push Convention. Yes, Ashley, I wish you were coming up from Memphis, but you can go to rainbowpush.org and you will be able to see the convention. The Rainbow Push Convention, Ariel Gold will be there. Jonah Karsh will be there. Dr. Latrice, LaShawn Latrice will be there. Camila Williams will be there. Reverend Dr. Todd Geary. Mark Fancher, I wish you could be there, but you'll be there in spirit. Reverend Dr. William Barber, Reverend Al Sharpton, Senator Bernie Sanders. The Nation magazine will be honoring Reverend Jesse Jackson. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar will be there. So many people. Nina Turner will be there, the former state senator from Ohio. Judge Greg Mathis, who's also the co-chair of our Push for Excellence program. Reverend Jackson met him in jail years ago, Ariel Gold, because Reverend just he would go to jails and prisons throughout the year just to spread some encouragement. And he heard Reverend, and he writes about it, and he always tries to remind people of this. He said, I heard him speak, and I was so inspired that I said, I want to work for you. He followed my father out of the meeting hall, and he said, Reverend, when I get out of here, I want to work for you. And my father said, son, you have got to get an education. And we connected him to Annette Rainwater, who you might remember, a great organizer up there, Mark Fancher in Detroit. And he never looked back. And then, Judge Mathis said, how did he make me the youth coordinator for the presidential campaign? He said, Reverend, I've never done this before. He said, I haven't either. Get at it, Greg. And look at him now. And there's so many people who we've met along the way who, when you serve the least of these, you don't know who you're touching. You know where you've been. You don't know where you're going. You don't know who somebody can become. So, let me just give you this word today. If you have to speak, say something kind. Lift somebody up. Don't tear people down. If you must do that, please be quiet. Please don't do that. Because we need to be about the business of lifting people up. That's what we try to do here. Even when you disagree with what you're hearing here, we realize that a lot of things that we're saying are paradigm busting, paradigm shifting, as we talk about the issues driving the campaign. But if you're not in pain, you're not growing. That's what happens. It's called growth pains. And what we're looking to do is give you information to help expand your thinking. We're not going to feed you talking points. We want to guide you to books and to different articles and to spaces and places where you can get information so that your mind can be expanded so that you can make more informed decisions. And so that when these people from the federal down to the local level, down to your ward, want your vote to get a job that you are paying them to do, make sure you're getting something out of this. Make sure you're getting out of the president and the vice president and your representatives in both houses of Congress and in both houses of your state legislatures and from your governors and from your county officials and your local officials. Make sure you are getting what you need, not just who you want. And even if you don't get who you want, you need to get what you need. Ariel Gold, Executive Director of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, National Conference of Black Lawyers, Attorney Mark Fancher, Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, Senior Pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church, iconic church in Baltimore, Maryland. And of course, he's from Rainbow Push, former Senior Vice President there. But, as Reverend Dr. Geary, no one ever stops working for Reverend. You just keep on going and going. And we got Camila Williams, good kids. Bad City. Love her. And Dr. LaShawn Latrice, everybody be careful. Not only is she gonna make some noise, but she's a psychologist. Watch what you say. You're gonna get examined. Hey, Jonah Karsh from If Not Now, you were with us in the last hour. I know you're running. The issues driving the campaign, we just had quite the spirited discussion in the last hour. And I wanted to give you a word before you leave. What thoughts would you like to leave us with?
Uh, can you hear me? Had a
Oh yeah,
little.
now we can. Now we
Okay,
can.
we're good.
Yes.
Awesome. Um, yeah, I mean, I think next week is a historic moment. On the one hand, you have the Democratic Party nominating a black woman for the first time, which in its own right is a historic thing that deserves to be celebrated. Uh, and on the other hand, you have an ongoing genocide, and you have one of the capitals of movement politics in the United States of America, Chicago, Illinois, hosting the convention, harkening back to 1968 when the convention was hosted and a large protest movement happened. And if not now, Chicago, my organization, will be participating in a march on the DNC coalition in Chicago, demanding justice for Black and Brown America, demanding redistribution of wealth in America, that the rich pay their fair share in taxes, and not just pay their fair share in taxes, but that we restructure our economy so that it's not set up for the benefit of the rich. So we don't have to do so much redistribution in the first place. We call that pre-distribution almost.
Hmm.
And of course, the issue that animates us, as if not now, is the ongoing genocide in Gaza that our country is funding. Our demand is not another bomb, that the vice president commit to not sending any more weapons to Israel. We're going to be out in the street fighting for that. And we're fighting for it because we believe that Donald Trump needs to be defeated. And we are trying to tell the vice president what she needs to do to engage the progressive base that will turn out to defeat Donald Trump.
Let me
So
ask you this, because we were just, when we engage in this critique, um, we heard from Arlene in the last hour, and we hear from a lot of different people who are listening, who are participating with the who are part of the Morning Stars. You all are, whether we agree or disagree. We're all family. They accuse you of promoting Trump rhetoric, of being a Trump supporter. What
mhm.
say you?
Well, I'm there's a
You're at a loss for words right now. I hear you.
no, I full stop. I am not a supporter of Donald Trump. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump.
Me
I will
either.
not be voting for Donald Trump. And I don't, and it's not even a question for me in that sense. The movement that I'm a part of is a big tent. There are people that view their votes very pragmatically, that are going to be everyone's going to be pushing for the policies that we care about. Some people are going to be saying, you know what, I see the threat. I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. I would vote for a corpse over Donald Trump, even as I will continue to fight in the streets. But there's another section of people. There are Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, Palestinians, Black Americans, people who have seen the harm that the United States government has done to them, seen the lack of change, seen endless campaign promises that are not achieved, and are saying, well, wait a second, Trump is bad, but what is my vote going to achieve if I vote for the vice president? And what we're saying is not that Donald Trump should win. What we're saying is that Donald Trump should not win, and therefore you need to listen to these people that might vote for you but aren't sure if they're going to until you give them some commitments. It's really that simple. It's we can't pretend that those people don't exist, because they do, and they have righteous concerns, and they need to be heard, because justice has been delayed for far too long in this country.
When I hear this young man, I have hope for the future. I really, really do. Because I can see, Reverend Dr. Yuri, um, how all of this work has made a difference. Of course, you met Reverend Jackson when you were in high school. You introduced him just about 10 years ago. That's amazing.
Actually, it was five. It was
Yeah.
five.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yeah, right. 50. But just kidding. Love you, Joe and Jonah Karsh. But we've been in it for a minute. Ariel Gold, Fellowship of Reconciliation, Mark Fancher, Attorney Mark Fancher, excuse me, National Conference of Black Lawyers, Dr. LaShawn Latrice. I'm going to be very, very careful as we make noise because remember, I told you she's a psychologist, everybody. She's a psychologist. And Camila Williams from Good Kids, Mad City. We got a lot to talk about, but I mean, what about Reverend Dr. Yuri? It's wonderful to see you. Of course, you are a lawyer as well, and you're dealing with a lot of cases, a lot of people who are dealing with injustice with the police. And we're going to hear from Dr. Latrice and Camila Williams. That's really their bailiwick. They're like, I'm watching. And the data shows this since 2022, since George Floyd was killed, more people have been killed by the police than ever. And yet, when you come to people and you don't even, we're not even asking for their votes. We're incredulously saying, hey, you're not going to vote for them. And there's a lot of pain out here. I mean, real pain, Reverend Dr. Yuri. So, I mean, please, what are the issues as you see them? Because you've got one of the most dynamic congregations in the country, and you also have a national ministry. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are the issues driving the campaign?
Well, good morning to you and all of my colleagues. Good to see you as well. A couple of things. The old law school question, every question in law school, there's one answer, and it's called it depends. There is this sense that we can come up with a single answer to address myriad concerns depending on who you are, where you live, what's going on. And so I think part of the problem that we run into with our politics is we try to come up with a one size fits all, one answer that addresses all of the needs, and we think that we'll come away with an agenda. One of the things as we're marking 40 years since Reverend's first run for president is to remember that I think one of the things we have to do a better job of is what we call in the church meeting people where they are. And so I think what part of this is going to come down to is what are you hearing on the ground where you are? Remember, the presidential election is not a thing. It is 50 state things that lead to one outcome at the convening of the Electoral College. And so I think it's important when we look at the 7 battleground states where they think the margins are really going to decide who's going to become president. These are states that are not leaning clearly blue or clearly red. It's going to come down to what are the concerns there. For some of them, it's going to be it's the economy, stupid, as they often like to say. We've heard that time and time again. George H.W. Bush ended up being undone in his run for a second term because the first Gulf War did not last long enough to distract us. And then the economy ended up being the thing that took him down, even as he was presenting for the first time NAFTA before the Congress, and then that ended up being carried over by President Clinton in his first term. So I think when we look at it, there'll be some broad issues. The economy, yeah, that's affecting everybody. You'll hear the soundbite politics, right? Police, what the vice president said. She was saying we need to rethink public safety. And part of that is where do we spend public dollars to be able to address the concerns of people? Because too often, this is to Dr. Latrice so that she doesn't examine me and think that I've lost my mind, although sometimes that's the case. Very often rely on the police to do more of the therapeutic or the social work, the systemic structural needs. So what does public safety look like? What does the job situation look like? Now that we are reaching what many economists call full employment and we're starting to look at those numbers, who gets left out? Who's on the margins? So I think part of this is going to be to avoid the temptation of coming up with an answer D, all of the above, that's going to fit all 50 states. It's going to have to be more nuanced. It's going to have to be more precise. There will be a general message, I think, of hope and possibility, as opposed to some of the regressive attitudes and policies we've heard from one side of the aisle versus the other. And I think then after that, it's really what's happening on the ground in the places where we got to get turnout. Here's what I do know. here's the strategy. We've still got to do what Reverend said. We got to register to vote. We got to verify registration. We've got to get educated about the process. We need to be looking at sample ballots across the states to understand all of the issues, not just at the top of the ballot, but all the way down the ballot. We should be filling out our ballots to take them into the polling place, and then we have to have a mobilization plan to get out and vote. That's the agenda.
Ariel Gold, your thoughts? Because we've seen the political sands, if you will, shift just radically over the past 4 or 5 weeks, really. What do you see? What are the issues, or is there an issue, or are there a whole cache of issues driving this campaign?
I want to agree with Reverend Yeri that we have to meet people where they're at, and there are a lot of issues at us, and I'm aware today that it's the primary for Representative Ilhan Omar, and hoping folks in her district turn out. And so, that brings up immediately the issue of dark money in politics, as we have seen the pro-Israel lobby spend unfathomable amounts of money to take out members of the squad. So, we have that as an issue. Of course, we have gun control as an issue. And Jonah, who was on, was absolutely right. Palestinian rights has become an electoral issue. And that is thanks to many, many dedicated years of organizing and advocating that it's now an issue in this election. And I hope to see Harris thread that needle. We know she doesn't have any power in the moment, but she can speak to her intentions to bring about a change, to approach the situation in the Middle East, not just with empty words, which is what we have seen from the Biden administration, but with real action and real consequences, to finally temper things down there and move towards a just and peaceful solution. So there's really a lot of issues here, and I think this is an opportunity for her. We haven't seen much on policy yet, and I'm not critical of that. She just came into being a candidate, and this is, obviously an unusual and unprecedented time, and so she's spending her time doing rallying right now. But we will need to see policy, and that will need to really speak to the issues. And I hope in this moment that the Democrats, that through the Harris campaign, we are able to reclaim some of the white working class that we have ceded to the Republican Party, also using empty words. But what is true is that folks can't buy a house, can't get an education, that life is not affordable here in the US right now. And we are spending ungodly amounts of money on our military industrial complex, and corporations are raking in ungodly amounts of wealth, and it's at the cost of working class America. And so I hope we're able to speak to that as well.
Well, Don O'Leary, I hear you. You want us to call out the Republicans, but do not let that calling out the Republicans and Trump really bringing him up incessantly. Don't let that be a substitute for demanding policy of the party for whom you are inclined to vote. That's part of the problem we have right now. We are voting mindlessly, uncritically, and we're not getting anything in return. That's not going to work. It's not going to work. So I hear you. But one thing that I have learned from growing up under Richard J. Daley, T.O. Hardeman, my parents said, looking back, because they've been here 60 years now, they said, Reverend Jackson became Richard J. Daley's biggest foe. Why is that significant? Because he has been the most powerful mayor, really, in modern American history. And he ran Dr. King out of town. Dr. King did not bring Reverend to Chicago. Reverend Jackson was in Chicago on a full scholarship to the University of Chicago. Dr. King hired him because he was a great organizer. Reverend James Bevel said, you got to get this guy because he can organize like nobody's business. And we've seen that. So he said, one of the things that he learned from Richard Daley, a whole lot of things. The tougher the foe, the greater the lessons, and the better you can be. Steel sharpens steel. You never call your enemy's name. See, I think if the corporate media were serious about making Donald Trump irrelevant, they wouldn't have called his name for 4 years. But that is all that they did, Todd Urey. And you enlarged him. What did Dwight McKee say? And we're still praying for Dwight McKee. He's in the hospital, but he's recovering so well. He's getting stronger every day. And so please keep him in your prayers. He said, why turn a monster into a martyr? That is what's happened. I didn't do that. In fact, I have avoided Trump. And you know what I've also done? I have not diminished him, because one thing I know, Reverend Urey, you know this from the Black church. When you go after pastor, you're going after every one of his congregants. Am I not lying? Hello, can I get an amen? You know it's true.
Or we'll quote, touch not mine anointed, quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Oh, yeah. And you start losing people when you start doing that. So you got to be real careful with that, because you insult people and you insult their intelligence. I remember when I would see people criticize Reverend, I would see, just because he's always been supported by average people and poor people. And they would say, do you think we're stupid? Do you think we're just following him just because he's here? So be careful with that, everybody. Pump the brakes. And you know what? Everybody has a right to their opinion. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to agree. But we have to mature in our politics and learn to disagree without being disagreeable. How about that? Camila Williams, your thoughts about this campaign?
It pretty much sums up what everybody has been saying already. Like, we need to get our voices heard. But again, I say that will be with our current leaders that has a seat at the table, that's taking our message back to them, because they are talking to us every day. Well, should be talking to us every day. So I'm focused on holding them accountable as well. Like, if you're in Congress and we're meeting with you, we're organizing it, you're seeing it on TV, you should be taking it back. And to be honest with you, I have not been seeing that. I have been seeing, we got to get her in first. We got to get VP Harris in first, and then we'll come back. Or come out to this party and pay this price, and maybe you will be able to talk to someone on her team.
How does that make you feel?
I've been invited, to be honest with you, I've been invited to more parties next upcoming week than I have in organizing around policy.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, should I go and start protesting and bring the protesters, or what? I'm like, this is an insult. We're more than just people that want to party. Like, this is our lives that are on the line.
So when you hear people say that you are supporting Trump, when you take that position, what do you say?
I have not, based off my everyday work, many people know that's not true, but
Mm-hmm.
they will say, well, you gonna let them in. And I'm like, okay, whether it's Trump, her, Dr. West, anybody, I'm still gonna hold them accountable, just like I'm gonna hold my elected officials accountable. But again, they just stuck on this glamorous lifestyle, or we're just getting ready to have this fascinating divine nine sister in office. That's the feeling I'm getting.
Okay, all right. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, make noise for change. What say you?
I'm kind of agreeing with my sister Camilla. Right now, I feel like instead of galvanizing people to understand that their voices should be heard, I think the campaign is kind of over many people's heads. When I say that, I talk to people on a day-to-day basis about this. They really feel like no matter what they do, no matter who they go and vote for, the person that gets in office is who the majority wants to be in the office. And they feel like the conversations that involve them and their issues are intentionally being ignored. And so as a grassroots organizer, as a community psychologist, as someone who really pushes for people to have systemic change because we've been disenfranchised for so many years. I think it's a major disservice not to encompass the voices of those who really, really, really should be included in this entire equation. So the DNC for me, I think it's a lot of people that don't even understand what the DNC is symbolic of. I think that people have disassociated themselves from being called Democrats because they think if they confine themselves to a party, that means they believe and understand or agree with everybody that's a part of that party. And lately, the Democratic Party has done, in the last 4 years, they've done some things that many of us out there in the organizing world, we just don't agree with. And so just to join in to be a part of the circle to say that you're going to vote for someone, not that it has anything to do with the other person, because we rarely say his name. So he's not important enough for us to focus on. Our thing is we would like to get our voices heard, and those that are impacted the most, that are heard the least.
Well, okay. I mean, T.O. Hardeman.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. First and foremost, I would like to say that about go back to Cori Bush for a second. When African American leaders began to speak up for world issues, such as what's going on over in Palestine and the Middle East, we have to be kind of careful and make sure that we have a whole lot of support here in the United States, being congressional leaders, right? So what happened to Cori Bush in regards to her being voted out because they put a lot of money, gave a lot of money to her opponent because she raised her voice about the Middle East conflict, right? And so I'm not saying I'm not saying she should not speak up for the people in Palestine, but at the same time, make sure your backyard is covered as well in regards to support, if that makes sense to everybody. We still have to fight for reparations on a higher level. So I'm going to take a page out of the book of the Palestinians in Chicago right now. The DNC is coming up next week, and they're expecting over 100,000 people to march in support of their efforts to try to bring an end to the Israeli occupation in Palestine. But the reality is that African American people should be bringing out 100,000 people for reparations, during the DNC as well. That's what I'm talking about, because we have a multitude of issues that we have not solved as far as African American people in America before we start speaking abroad. That's my contribution. As far as the presidential race with Ms. Harris, along with Trump, what happened, Trump was not expecting Mrs. Harris to be the candidate. So he doesn't really have a beef with Mrs. Harris. He has a beef with Biden from the past because they're like in the same era. And so what's going on now, Mrs. Harris, she's beginning to gain a lot of momentum based on the visuals, like the rallies they've organized, the multitudes of people coming out. She's actually leading in some of the battleground states right now. It's unheard of. So the verdict is still out. The election is in November. But I just see like a Barack Obama moment. I've said it before. It appears to be another Barack Obama moment here. That doesn't mean that she's the right candidate. I'm not going to get into all that. It doesn't mean that Trump's the right candidate. My thing is whoever's going to deliver for the people, and I plan to stick to reparations myself. I plan to stick to better educational services in the African-American community and abroad. I know the United States is filled up with a whole lot of different cultures. We have to support everybody, but I would like to know where the candidates stand with, you even have Bobby Kennedy running as an independent. So we don't talk about him a lot, but I know he's supporting reparations. So that's it for me, Santita, right now.
Well, he's not supporting it as fully as we'd like.
Yes.
But is, and because that's its own debate. But I think that all of these issues are intersectional. Karen is saying that Palestinian rights are not a top line issue, Mark Fancher, for Black Americans, but it's a top line issue. It is a top line issue.
Yeah. Okay.
And because it's our money. It's our money. And let me tell you, a slaughter anywhere could happen here also. I mean, because that issue has taken out Cori Bush, at
Yes,
least from this, as a Democrat, it's taken out Jamal Bowman.
Right.
It's threatening to take out Ilhan Omar today because her opponent is heavily funded by dark money. I mean, so we can't say that this doesn't matter because this lobby has said, because these candidates, particularly the Black progressives, but also Andy Levin up in Michigan, because these progressives vote in this direction, we want them out, which means we don't have reliable votes on a lot of things that matter to us. Because if their strings are being yanked on this, trust me, they're going to be yanked on DEI, because it is Bill Ackman who is pushing against DEI, who pushed Claudine Gay out, the first Black president of Harvard. They've been pushing out all these progressive presidents from these Ivy League schools. Oh, there's intersectionality, and we need to be real clear on that and fight that, because it's all one fight. But what we have to do is be unapologetic as Black people about our issues. We're the only people in the world who are told that we can't talk about racism, that we've got to apologize for our issues. My brother Jesse, when he was in Congress, was at an event, and I saw Reverend Jamal Bryant talking about this, and I had to call him and thank him for this. They were campaigning, I think, for one of these presidential campaigns. And someone got up and said, you know what, Congressman, you're only there because of your daddy. He said, you know what? Black Americans are the only people in the world who have to apologize for having a good and present daddy. Wow. We should stop. We cannot be Black. We are tragically Black. We're triumphantly Black. No one's been more resilient. No one has absorbed more blows. We've taken the hits here. And we can't be apologetic about we can't have asks. We have to have demands, T.O.
Now,
and that is something we have to continue to push for.
Yeah, I agree. We need to demand reparations, though, Santita. That's what
I'm saying. I'm saying
we should demand it, okay? Because it's been far too long right now, way too long. And I sympathize with the Palestinian people myself. I want to make that clear.
No, of course.
But I just want to make sure that we take care of our own business here in the United States and get what we need as Black people. Finally. That's what I'm talking about.
I'm agreeing with you, and I'm just saying it's all of the above, because all this stuff is on the table right now, because nobody's even talking about Haiti. My goodness.
For sure. Yeah, Haiti's for sure.
And it's down the street. Yeah. we talking about putting them in at Guantanamo base in the prison. Wow. Yes. Attorney Mark Fancher, it's all queued up for you. Hello, Josh from Detroit. Can't wait to hear Mr. Tigers, but yeah, we got our Detroit contingent. Go on. Attorney Mark Fancher.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think Sisters Williams and Latrice, have really focused on what I think is the most important thing, and that is that the chronic error that I think that people have made, at least since the 1970s, is to elevate politicians and the political process to a level that is unwarranted and unhelpful. The fact is that real progressive change cannot be made through the political process. It cannot. It simply cannot be made that way. The only thing that the political process can do is to rubber stamp or to validate or to approve the change that has been made by the masses of the people at the grassroots. That's the only thing that it can do, because politicians do not lead, they follow. They go where they're forced to go. And the tragedy, I think, what's been unhealthy about most recent developments with respect to Kamala Harris and her emergence is that before she was named as the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party, most people on the left felt like they really had no political home. And they were engaged in real hardcore community organizing, grassroots organizing. You had people who were dissenting from the Democratic Party. You had an uncommitted movement. You had encampments on campuses. You had people organizing and strategizing and talking about and raising the level of consciousness about Zionism. You had all kinds of things that were going on. And then once things change and you have Kamala Harris named as the presumptive nominee, then this thing happens where people believe that the Messiah has arrived. The focus shifts. Yes, I was glad to hear that this continuing grassroots organizing is going on around Gaza and the other things, but it doesn't have the intensity and the urgency that it once had. And I think that the focus and the discussion has been, what can we do to make sure that Kamala Harris enacts the policies that we want? What are her policies? We don't care what her policies are. What we should care about are what are the policies of the people. What do the people want? If the people pursue this, then she will jump on board if in fact the oligarchy allows her to do that. And this is not something that I'm just making up. This is the product of generations of organizing and experience. I'm only taking a cue from those that we revere. If the political system was something that offered us the opportunity for real change, then Dr. Martin Luther King would have put most of his focus on that. He would have probably run for office himself. But what he did is he organized the people. He was mobilizing the people. He was working with them so that once he had the people behind him, then the political system was forced to respond to him. You know, even when Reverend Jackson ran, it was so clear. It was so clear that what he was doing, he was not running as a politician who was presenting himself as a messiah. It was always, we have a rainbow coalition. We have an organization. We have people. We are going to do this. What we are doing is revolutionary in that we're taking the movement into places where it has not been. And we together are going to make this change. It was never so much about him being a messiah. And so I think that we fall into that trap where we begin to believe that kind of thing. And here are some of the other shortcomings of focusing so heavily on this, is that we miss opportunities. You know, there was a passing reference made earlier to the issue of police violence and police misconduct. Um, you know, in the wake of George Floyd's killing, we saw mass protests, mass organizing in the streets, lots of discussion, people, everyday people getting involved and discussing and working on that. That made change because in the work that I do, it is a part of my job to have regular ongoing conversations with police chiefs and police administrators and police leadership. I can tell you, with few exceptions, police leadership gets it. The kinds of reforms that people have been talking about making in terms of changing emergency response, de-escalation, and all of the kinds of reforms that people were agitating for and calling for in the streets, they get it. The problem is that the rank and file police officers do not get it and will not get it because there is a hardcore police culture that, along with police unions and other institutional factors, that prevent the leadership and the direction that police chiefs are trying to give from filtering down to the rank and file. The work that needs to be done to break up that kind of police culture is work that has to be done by the people on the grassroots level. If all of our focus is on a messiah and a hope that electing a particular president or a governor or a mayor is going to result in it, if that's where our emphasis is, then we miss these opportunities to make the changes at the bottom. And it also prevents us from engaging in a sophisticated analysis. So I agree that reparations is way overdue for African people. But if we engage in an analysis, we understand that reparations historically have not been paid to people who lack power. Okay, reparations were paid to those who were the victims of the Nazi Holocaust only after World War II had been won and after the Nazis had been suppressed. And they were able to go to Germany and to say, now you must pay. And so for African people in North America who want reparations, we are totally powerless. We don't control anything that counts. We lack access and to resources that make those with power blink and look and pay attention. We don't control anything. And so what we're basically doing is going and begging for it and asking for it, and in some cases demanding it, but we're not taken seriously because we lack power. And so recognizing that what we need is power in order to get reparations and other things that we demand, we have to think strategically about that. The circumstances of Palestinians are in many ways identical to the circumstances of people in Africa. Okay? Both peoples have been the victims and the targets of settler colonialism. And the colonists have been the same people who've colonized, the people who've colonized Palestine are the same ones who colonized Africa and who've colonized other regions of the world. And they need to go. We need to drive them out. And in order to do that, we need to unite our causes and our revolutions. And so when we fight for Palestine and Palestinians, we're fighting for Africa and Africans because we're attacking the same enemies. When we go after Zionism, Zionism has had a negative impact. It has in many ways weakened Africa, has exploited Africa. We fight for ourselves when we fight against Zionism. And so when we come together with other struggling and oppressed peoples who are victimized by the same enemies that we have, then we increase our opportunities and options and access to power. And when we get that power, when Africa becomes truly free of all of the external and foreign forces that control it, when Palestine is free of all of the forces that control it, when Central and South America are free of the influence and the impact of imperialism, when all of these people who are powerless come together and make demands, those with power will have no choice but to give us what we demand. That's when we make the demand. We don't try and make it from a position of weakness. We make it from a position of strength. And in order to do that, we have to expand our scope far beyond the electoral process and look at organizing and dealing with the masses of people around the world who share the same misery that we share and who have the same shared political interests.
Indeed. And that is why South Africa brought the Palestinian issue to the World Court, because the Palestinians supported them in their freedom struggle. Indeed, in the apartheid era, a plane could not refuel any place on the African continent. If you flew from South Africa, the first place they could refuel was Israel. No African nation would allow them to refuel. And a lot of the monies that the ANC were able to get, they were able to get from the Palestinian community, from the broader Arab community. We need to know that. But see, we've been locked away from that information. Every major African head of state who had a funeral, up until Yasser Arafat died, he was at those funerals. And he was received as a hero because he was their brother beloved. He was their ally, just like Castro was. All people all over the world who we make a connection between these struggles and amongst these struggles, and we see ourselves as one. And I include our Jewish brothers and sisters who are not in on genocide. Either you're for it or you're against it. It's that simple. That's why I appeal to our Jewish brothers and sisters. I want you to fight as hard for Haiti as we're fighting for Gaza. We need that support. Yemen, we need that support. The Congo. Congo. King Leopold killed 20 million Black people. Nobody talks about that. That's profoundly offensive to me. That ought to be on your lips. 20 million Black people. And those he didn't kill, he chopped off their limbs. Oh, hey. We're all in the same boat, y'all. We are. Joshua. Yeah. Jews and allies. This is perfectly queued up for you.
I'll tell you.
You're doing Jewish Voice for Peace, Jewish Voice for Peace action, and now you're like, wait a minute, we are allies. We've got to come together.
And that's just the thing, Santita. I'm hearing two topics talking about right now, which is one, the power, and opposition has done a good job of dividing us, because while we are divided like this, we will not get the power we need to make change. And I hear a lot of really good things today about U.S. issues first, and I agree with it. But I do want to hold up a little number here in terms of getting reparations. Here's a number, a $3.5 billion. 3.5, that's a big number. That is the amount of money that will not be spent on reparations nor in healthcare. That is the money that Washington will provide to Israel. They decided on this Friday to spend on U.S. weapons, to buy U.S. weapons and military equipment. That is where the money is going. So what I'm saying to everyone on the panel and all the listeners is, our issues are all the same. It all comes down to the money. How is our money being spent? And right now, our money is being spent to fund Israel. And let's bring that money home so we can do U.S. issues first, so we can now build our power together. Simple as that, Santita. That's where my head's at this morning.
Well,
Tio,
I mean,
I appreciate what you said, but I hope that gives some context.
It does, because look, because everybody's coming to Chicago. So I mean, Camila, what do you think as we welcome everyone to Chicago? What will they see?
I feel like they will see the people power. They will see demonstrations in the streets, and then some of them may enjoy our beautiful city. But most of all, they will see demonstrations and people speaking their causes loudly and unity.
Tio, what do you expect? How will because you know how Chicagoans get down. What do you think? How
Well,
will
after
everybody feel?
Camila, she's telling the truth. They're going to see demonstrations, a lot of demonstrations for a multitude of issues. But I want to thank Brother Mark because he broke it down. It was very profound what he said. I mean that because we don't appear to have the power. We'll make a splash in the ocean, but we cannot swim and take these reparations all the way to the top. And I understand both sides of the coin, but right now my people are suffering with criminal justice reform. Look what happened to Sonia Massey, right? Look at it. It happens time and time again. It continues to happen. So I believe that there's going to be major demonstrations, and it might get a little bit out of control here in Chicago. There's a
You think so?
possibility. Well, there's some possibility because there's a lot of information being disseminated throughout Chicago right now that there may be more than just some protest. I mean, more than just protests. It might lead to some other actions or whatever the case may be. I don't have anything to.
Well, can I
No.
say something, Santita?
Yeah, because
Just
let me just
piggybacking.
say this as a movement person. The government saboteurs. Only that's
Right.
part of the mix, and that's why understanding how to protest is important.
Yeah.
Because that is the only time Dr. King had a march that was disrupted. It was in Memphis a week before he was murdered, and it was a Black Morehouse college student who was affiliated with the CIA.
Exactly. I remember.
So no, I can't tell you. There was a man who used to drive my father around. He was part of Black Men Pushing, which was our usher board. Turns out he was from the Red Squad. Who was the Red Squad? They killed Fred Hampton, and it turns out once he was discovered, he had been sent to kill Reverend too. He said, but as I got to know Reverend and your mother and you kids and people at Push, every time he said, I had so many opportunities, I just couldn't do it. Oh, it's nothing but God's grace.
Wow.
Howard Pointer. And he wanted to tell everyone far and wide. He said, I was pulled out of the lineup when I was training to become a police officer. They thought I'd be good for that. And then they detailed me to Push.
Wow.
And I was sent to kill him, but I just couldn't do it.
And there are always going to be people like that. That's what we need to understand.
Right. And you need to call them out
when they're organizing. We have to identify those people who come just to agitate, just to make chaos. Mark said something that was very profound. There is power in numbers. There's power in unity. So even though Tio, my brother, is saying we want reparations, all of us want reparations.
Yeah.
But we understand Black people have been disenfranchised, beat down in the protests. You all have to remember, we've been out there for 10 years plus. And when we watch what happens to us as opposed to what happens to our allies, many of us fall back just because of that. Now, there are some of us who are resilient, who are going to continue to stand in the midst of being hit by batons, kicked by horses, all of that. But at the end of the day, we stand with our fellow brothers and sisters in the Palestinian movement because we need those numbers, because even though we have some differences, what we need to be standing in unity is more stronger, is more alike than it is divisive. And so we need that power when Black people are afraid to come out and stand up because they feel like what's happening in their communities are not being acknowledged, or what their voices are saying are not being heard. They're being silenced. So we have to remember we're fighting against police brutality. We're fighting against murderous police. We're fighting against crooked corruption when people say, just vote for this person because she's Black. Well, come on now, let's just keep it real. If we look at Dalton, if we just did that, that's awful right now. That's not looking good for us. And so we have to be honest with ourselves. Many of us need to just continue to educate and spread the word that we want our voices heard. And we want to make sure those, as small as the localities, the communities out there, that they're heard as well. So our chances when we make noise, we're making noise because there is a group of people that are being stepped on, that are being killed, pushed, put off to the side. And we got to do what we got to do to join forces with our allies. And that's why we stand with the Palestinians. We stand because we believe our issues will be magnified next to theirs.
And you know what? And we can't suppress this discussion, everybody. No one here is supporting former President Trump. And I do give him the respect of his office because he's the former president. Because if you want people to respect President Obama, then respect is respect. That having been said, hey, everybody, African Americans will be strong when Africa is strong, which is part of Reverend Jackson's push to make us African Americans, to connect us to a continent, not just a color. We will not be strong until our continent is strong, until we get the yoke of colonialism from around its neck. That is going to make us strong. And I think that's part of the reason the Jewish community fights for Israel so hard. And they fight for each other so hard because they know that they understand that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Ariel Gold, we just had this big intersectional conference, even in a blizzard, and we had thousands upon thousands of people who tuned in. And it was intersectional. I mean, I was shocked at the people who came in, and we've got the Nation magazine, Todd Geary, who are going to be honoring Reverend Jesse Jackson, and it's going to be the rainbow. Some of our white farmers are going to come in. You've got Reverend Barber who's coming in. You've got Reverend Al Sharpton who's coming in. You've got Senator Bernie Sanders, who came into national politics by chairing the campaign in Vermont. You've got Nina Turner. You've got so many people are going to be, Judge Greg Mathis, who are going to be coming in to be a part of the People's Convention, which is going to lead to the Democratic Convention. Ariel, and we want all of you who are going to be marching and coming to Chicago. We want Rainbow Push to be your home, Ariel Gold, because that's what we did in January at 930 50th Street. Got closing remarks very quickly from everyone. Ariel, your closing thoughts.
Well, I'll see you in Chicago, and I hope to see a lot of you in Chicago. And I just want to echo what you just said, Santita, about intersectionality. It is all of us or none of us. And, you know, we're in the midst of a really, really big challenge. And we can only hope to rise to the occasion if we do it together. So let's bring our issues together. Let's realize the ways that we are all connected, and let's struggle together for a better world.
Amen. Reverend Dr. Geary, your thoughts.
Well, one, I think we often misunderstand organizing and what the objective is. The objective in this moment has to be very precise, very particular, very focused. And then it allows for divergent priorities to come together and do what we call coalition building. This is not going to be a one and done. To my brother Mark Fancher's point about Messiah complex, this is not we run to the polls in this next season, and then all of a sudden our problems and our woes will be ended. That's not the case. The reality of this American experiment has been problematic for everybody on this call, I would argue, in some way or other. And it has required a persistence in making sure that we engage when we can, as we can, where we can. And so this is not, will it fix everything, but will this move us closer to the goal? At the end of the day, Monopoly is a game. And while we get caught up on which pieces we're going to choose, it doesn't matter which piece you have if you don't understand the rules. At the end of the day, the rules are going to guide what comes out of this. And if we don't become good at understanding the rules, as Reverend did when he ran the first time, to be able to change the rules, then we're going to find ourselves under the boot of those who benefit from the rules. That's called America. That's not just Childish Gambino. That's the reality of our history. And so we got to get in where we fit in and do our part.
Well, now, how does one follow a preacher? Well, I ain't got the answer, Reverend Mark Fancher. I mean, Attorney Mark Fancher. Oops.
No, I can't follow the Reverend.
You can, but
I'll say this. I am very excited during this period, not for reasons that many are because of Kamala Harris. I'm excited because I think we're in a magic moment when the level of consciousness among so many people about so many things that they've never known about is at an all-time high. You know, the fact that the Palestinian cause has been elevated to the level that it has, that people understand Zionism, and that you have people within the Jewish community who understand it and who are analyzing it and behaving responsibly toward it, that we have people of all different races, nationalities, and ethnicities who are turning to each other as opposed to against each other. You know, this is moving closer to what God wants for us as a human family. And I think that, you know, we just have to avoid the pitfall of falling back into the same politics of the world, as established by the oligarchy, putting us back in that same box that we've been in for generations. Let's stay outside of it, continue to turn toward each other, continue to educate and inspire each other, and victory will be ours.
Amen to that. I mean, because indeed the whole point has been to create the beloved community. That was what Dr. King was striving for. That's what we've been striving for. Everybody, the mission statement of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, my father's home organization, the organization created by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and other ministers, was to save the soul of America, to save the soul of the nation. It was not black and white together, kumbaya. No, 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 no. It was to save the soul of America. So this was about a spiritual transformation. That's what this is. I think we're on the precipice of that. And I think it's going to become more challenging as we go through these times, because the end times means I think we give way to a new time. And that certainly is my prayer. And so I'm going to get some closing thoughts. I've got to be inside of 30 seconds for everybody here because I got to edit this thing and get it to AM 950 radio. But, Dr. Latrice, your closing thought?
Yes, my closing thoughts are, as we move forward for next week, let's not forget the people who have been victims of these systemic issues like poverty, homelessness, lack of quality health care and education, and lack of service to mental health issues. When we come together and we unify, let's keep that in mind, that we all have goals that we need to achieve. We all have issues affecting the Black and brown communities as well as the Palestinian communities. But let's just remember, let's unite and just become one loud voice. Let's strike harder like that.
And Haiti, I'm with you, all of it, because it's all the same thing. T.O. Hardeman, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Violent interrupters.
Yeah. I'd like to close out by just saying all power to the people. I'll just keep it simple like that. It's all about people power, okay? And I thank you for having me on the show today.
Oh, your family. Get out of here. When can we hear you on WVON?
That's right. Yeah, I'm on WVON every Sunday morning from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. And the show I built to show up, all praise due to God, for the last 4 years. And we have a lot of listeners now. The platform is really pretty strong right now. I want to thank everybody for their support.
And don't you ever come on this show again and not mention that.
All right, got you covered.
I want people to listen to your show. Josh, Mr. Detroit.
I'm just going to reiterate again that the money we need to do the things we need to do right now is being spent overseas, $3.5 billion of it. So I'm very grateful when I hear everyone on the panel start to come together in a cohesive thought about how to create change. But I think it comes down to, let's get the power so we can go after the money that's spent abroad and spend it here. Thank you.
Amen to that. Kabila Williams, you got the final word, 30 seconds.
My final word is that I want the listeners to know that we have power, and we will continue to have that power if we come together in unity and stay focused and then be involved after this election. Let's stay involved. Let's keep pushing. And lastly, I just want to shout out to my fellow millennials and Gen Zers. They are doing some amazing work across the world. Them Gen Zers in Kenya, they are holding it down and they are shifting the narratives within their government.
Amen to that. And for those of us who are post-Gen Zers, let's keep up the struggle. I know that doesn't include you, Reverend Dr. Yuri, and it certainly doesn't include you, Josh, or you, or you, Mark. It's just me. It's okay.
I'm a 20-something.
I know this. Y'all crazy, but it's all right. I love you all. Just sick. Everybody who's got an AARP card, except for the ladies. Oh, love you. Have a great day, everybody. God bless you.
Have
the
a
Rainbow
great
Push
day.
Convention. Rainbow Push Convention. Join us there. You don't want to miss it. Starting on the 15th. Chicago, Illinois. Go to rainbowpush.org for more information. Love you, everybody. God bless.
All right. Take care.